Welcome back to another training game. I'm on the move today, so don't have my normal microphone set up with me, but this will suffice for this particular game. So without further ado, let's go in and play a 15-minute game with 10 seconds each per move. I've got the black pieces, and we've got a Sicilian on board. I'm going to play, hopefully with good time management in this game. So far, these moves are all theoretical, and I've already sort of decided that in this line, this is what I'm going to play, and if he plays knight c3, I would play this move. But if he plays this move, which he's played, then I do something different. I believe here what I do is actually I believe I'd take my knight out here. I believe that's the case anyway. Or is it that I take this, he takes back? No, that's not it. I got to put my knight out first. Yep. Now on the next move, assuming he just develops his knight, to defend this pawn, now I'm going to take this, dragging his queen out this way. Then I'm going to play d6 to prevent this pawn from getting pushed forward in any kind of damaging way for me. And pretty soon I'm going to put my bishop over here, and I'll be able to get castled if I want. But certainly I think now I'm out of theory. I don't know what the theory is here anymore. And so we're going to have to start to think. Now, I'm going to castle first and foremost, so that when this knight jumps away, possibly with a tempo on this bishop, it'll also be attacking the queen, which now therefore moves back out of the way. But there could certainly be an argument for me taking this pawn right now, even though it is defended by his knight. And the argument would be, if you take my knight, in the first place I've already taken a pawn, so it's not a huge material deficit. In the second place, I'm going to take another pawn here with a tempo on your rook. So really I'm getting two pawns for the knight. So the material investment here is not very large, but in return I get an attack on the rook. The rook's probably going to have to move here, which is the only square it can go to where I don't take it. And at that point I can jump back and provide a check here to the king. And unless the king wants to move out of the way and give up its castling rights, which it's not going to want to do, this bishop's going to have to move back. And sure, then I can take, he takes with the queen, and then probably everything's fine for him in that case. But what I could also do is cut that variation slightly short. So take the pawn, he takes back, take this pawn, assuming he moves the rook. I could then go on another variation from here and say, look, I've banked the two pawns for the knight. I've got a bishop on a long diagonal, which has opened up, and that's very nice. But I just need to come up with a nice follow-up plan here. Maybe one of the things I could consider is then I could give this check. If I give this check, again, unless the king wants to move out the way, he's going to have to block the check. And if he blocks the check, it really doesn't matter if he does it with the bishop or the queen. In any case, at the very least, I can then come and win a third pawn, thereby defending my bishop up here. So this is why I say there is an argument to simply take this pawn off the board. But it does need to be calculated. So let's do that now in a bit more depth. So let's say knight takes e4, knight takes e4, bishop takes b2, hitting the rook. If he doesn't move the rook, is there anything else he can do here? Maybe what he could do is play bishop h6, hitting my rook. So I'll put the arrows down here. Take, 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 hitting his rook. But if he doesn't move the rook, what he could do is instead come here with his bishop, hitting my rook. In that case, I think I would be actually quite likely to provide this check, because of the simple reason that he either brings this bishop back or he leaves it where it is and he has to move the king. If instead he were to, and I think if he moves the king, that's fine, because once he moves the king, well, I just move my rook out the way. So I'm not afraid of that. I think that's fine. One more look before we actually probably play this move. After take, 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 if he just castles and I take the rook, I'd say there I'm fine, because I'm actually going to have a material advantage there. And the initial investment of my knight for 1 pawn, and then 2 pawns, and then an exchange will actually be in my favor. And I think I should be right there. So all of that has used a bit of time, but it's all to say that this is definitely a move I can play. Let me just see if there's any moves I might prefer to play instead, because there are other options. Perhaps Queen A5. Queen A5 is a nice move because it pins this knight to the king. The king can't, well, the knight can't move. And because the knight can't move, this pawn becomes undefended. Problem is he can just castle, and if he castles, then the knight suddenly is not pinned, and therefore it can move, and therefore this pawn is defended. And then my queen here is maybe not doing quite as much. So I think this move is making more and more sense. We just really have to figure out what we want to do after this. When he does move the rook, assuming that that is best, and I think it is based on my calculations. After he moves the rook, what I want to do is the only remaining question. And I think there, this Queen A5 idea check is probably quite okay, because even if he attacks my queen by dropping his bishop back, I could either drop my bishop here, which prevents him from castling, because if he castles he loses the bishop, or he takes my bishop, I take back, another check, he blocks, but after he blocks, I take, he takes, we're getting into an end game, and in that end game I'm down slightly in terms of material. I'm down slightly in terms of material. He doesn't really have any particular weaknesses except that this pawn would be isolated and this pawn is also going to be isolated. Again, assuming that I've won this pawn. So we could actually go for something like that. And the follow-up might be something like bishop e6, just looking to then get my rooks on these files. But I'm not too sure. I'm going to go down this road though. After all that, I'm going to go down this road. And after he plays this and I give the check, if he does block with the bishop, what I might do is just take this pawn here, claim material advantage, claim that I have this bishop on a beautiful diagonal, and then go on from there. So I could actually not give this check, I now realize, because the knight's there, so good thing I wasn't going to do that anyway. But I'll give this check and I'll just come and collect this pawn. We'll give that a go. We'll see what that's worth. Maybe a mistake, of course. Maybe a mistake. Ooh, that's an interesting idea. That's an interesting idea, because I actually would have thought here I could bring my bishop back. I forgot that this knight would be here defending the square. So I can't play this. Obviously, he just takes. And if I do this, he's, again, just going to take my bishop. So I think here I'm actually somewhat forced into the trade of queens, which isn't exactly what I wanted. Not exactly what I wanted, but maybe not also necessarily the worst thing in the world. So I'll take the queen, basically forced, and then we'll just have to play on, basically. So he retreats his bishop, makes a lot of sense. I am down a pawn. So again, even though I've made probably a mistake, it's not the biggest problem in the world. And like I said, he's got 2 isolated pawns to deal with. So it's really not the end of the world. What I could do is play a move like bishop f5. And say if you take my bishop, I'm going to take the knight. That's possible, but I've gone through such efforts to, get this bishop, I might as well probably try and keep it now that I have it. And if I'm going to keep it, maybe I play this, and then on the next move I can try and do something like this. Problem, yeah, that should be fine. So let's try that. For what it's worth, we'll keep our bishop. And on the next move, we can try something like this, which does not drop the pawn because he would then drop this. So I think this is a very natural move to make, pinning this knight. He probably, of course, can defend the knight, but we move on from there, essentially, will be my contention. So I'll pin the knight to start with. Then we can think about either guarding this pawn or pushing it forward. All right, so yep, I used a lot of time and I made a mistake in the calculation, but the game's still very much alive as far as I can tell. And we just have to come up with a way to proceed. That's the long and short of it. And that's going to depend on what he does. I mean, I think here he's most likely going to play bishop d3 just to simply defend the knight and to also break the pin. But the pin is not that easy to break because where does the knight actually move? If it moves here, well, I take the bishop. Same applies if he moves here. If he gives a check, well, I take. And keep in mind, if he ever takes my bishop's defended. So same as if he moves here, I take. And then if he takes my bishop, I take back. So basically the pin is still on. The pin is actually still on at present. I don't think I can actually take advantage of the pin. However, that's the basic problem. I could try something like this, but after he takes back, there's no more danger to him. And secondarily, once I do this, he can jump here and everything will be okay for him. That could be a reason to play this b6 move, which I'm going to put on the board. I'm going to put that on the board, and then maybe in future I can play e6 as a preparation for d5. And now when I play, if I get the chance to play e6 and then d5, he won't have this square available anymore. So it's a long plan, it's a slow plan, probably too slow, and you can see he's signaling that he's about to play this move. So if I just play e6, he's going to play this and basically force me to trade bishop. But that's not necessarily the worst thing that I could foresee happening. Another option I could do is I could play h5 to prevent g4, because then on g4 I simply take, and if he takes again, I take again, and I've won a pawn back, which would be fine. So h5 does put an end to this idea as far as I can tell. And that might be a nice way to proceed, and then, you know, in the coming moves I can try these ideas. So let's do that. Let's go with h5, take this possibility not away from him. Of course, he can still do it, but I think it takes the sting out of the idea. I believe this pawn structure, as we approach an endgame, is pretty stable for me. It shouldn't present too many issues. But we'll just see, you know, what's he doing with this knight? Probably wants to push his pawn and put his knight back here where it can defend the bishop. In the meantime, he's actually played this move, interestingly, which attacks a pawn, but I was always planning to push this pawn forward. Now I know that when I push that pawn forward, he could take this pawn, but then again, he loses the bishop. Not only the bishop, but an exchange will fall after that as well. If I push this pawn and he attacks my rook, then again, I attack the bishop, and if he takes this pawn, I take this. So I think this actually works, and I'm going to proceed with my plan. Just going to proceed with my plan and say, what's your bishop doing here? Yes, it can come here, but when I attack it and it moves away, did I miscalculate something again? I think I probably did. No, I didn't, because when I attack it and it moves away, I can attack it again, and at a certain point I feel there's going to be an alignment issue. I thought I had calculated it, but perhaps not. So after this, I come here, he comes, okay. So this is an interesting moment in that this long, slow plan of b6, and then even having to insert h5 to prevent this move, and then e6 and possibly d5 is now possibly available to me. But what he's doing is he's broken the pin, because now he can move the knight away, in theory, and when it moves away, the bishop will be defended by the other rook. That's his claim, his central claim. And it's true. It's absolutely true. If I play this, even takes, he moves the knight away, and then what? I take here, he takes back, and again, he's just up a pawn in this endgame. So I might have to come up with something a little bit better. And one of the ideas I could have here is in fact to take, and when he takes back, move my rook over to the c file where it attacks this pawn. But keeping in mind that he also has this as a possibility, which double attacks my rook, the d8 square from which the rook may otherwise defend d6 and also attacks d6. So maybe I might want to insert a crazy looking move like f6. Problem with f6 is, of course, that he can simply take this pawn. So I don't really love it. I might actually have to take this first, and then he takes back, hitting my rook. So I can come here, hitting the bishop, takes, hits my rook. I'm not liking the way that this is going. We need to change this up. Not liking the way that this is going. So maybe d5 is comparatively one of the better moves that I could play. It moves this vulnerable pawn up a little bit, and it still asks this knight where it wants to go. I mean, most likely it's probably going to come somewhere like this, into my grill, so to speak. But then I can take, if it does go there, take, and when he takes back, push the bishop away. When the bishop moves, maybe here, at least I can then try and continue pinning him. So for what it's worth, I think I have to proceed down this line, because I don't see a lot of other options here. He can give me a check, and then try and possibly ruin my pawn structure, but you know, that's probably not the most important part in this position anymore. So what do I do here? What do I do here? He's just taken. Well, I guess my basic plan was just to take back. It's not the only thing. Now that he's blocking this diagonal, I can actually take this knight off the board so that it doesn't come with check and the ability to ruin my pawns. So I can take here, and when he takes back, I can then play this f6 move if I want to try and move his bishop away. And when the bishop moves away, take here. I mean, that's a possibility. So take, he takes, and then even take, he takes. But then he's got two kind of big, powerful, annoying bishops. So I might prefer this move after all. Just take my pawn back. And then after check, I take. If he takes, I can come here. But his bishop, if it sits here, any piece of his that sits here is going to be a very powerful piece. And I don't like that. I don't want to give him any powerful pieces. So maybe playing f6 is a better option. It's really not clear to me, unfortunately. It's not a good position. It's really not a good position. Well, I'm going to take, and we'll just try and play on. I don't think I'm lost yet, but I'm definitely worse for the moment. But let's put the ball in his court for a while and see what he comes up with. I think the game still has a long way to go. So he plays the check to start with. Now I can either move my king into a corner and let his knight sit here, at which point he can take here and ruin my pawn structure, or I can take his knight and then he sits his bishop here. And then maybe I can either take his bishop or move my bishop back, maybe even leave my bishop where it is and put a rook somewhere more useful. I think of those two options, I prefer the second, so I'll actually take. He's now got the bishop pair and a very strong bishop here, peering into my position in a very annoying way. If instead he takes this bishop, well then obviously it's forced to take the other bishop. Well, it's not. I mean, I could still take this. So yeah, he takes like this, and he's cutting my king off, although my king can still walk here if it wants. He's taken away this important square from my rooks. Important because I want to defend this pawn. So I need to address that. That's an important point. And one way I can address the defending this thing is by using my bishop to defend. For him to get his bishop into a place where it can attack this pawn, it's going to have to go back and then around. So 2 moves. So let's say I come here, he goes back. Then I might need to do something like this. And when he comes around, then I can come here. But then he comes here, adding another guy. And how do I get yet another guy here? It's probably not going to be possible, given that I can never play this D whatever move. Therefore, maybe I should go rook here. Let's say he takes, I take back. Then my pawn structure is an absolute mess, so I don't really want to allow that. Same time, takes, he's already attacking the pawn, and I don't want to allow that. So I will come back here to start with. What I might try and do is something along the lines of getting a rook to the c file, and then bringing the rook here, so that I can maybe play some sort of discovery, moving my bishop away and just getting rid of this real pain in the ass bishop. And giving up this pawn in the process, but possibly, I have to get rid of this bishop if I'm going to have any kind of freedom along my own territory. So I'm sure I haven't played this game well, obviously, because I'm losing to a 1696 at present. But like I say, the game's not over, and we're going to continue. I think he's going to need to try and attack this isolated pawn. It's not the only thing he could attack, but the fact that he has this extremely strong bishop is definitely working in his favor. Now I'm quickly going to put my rook onto an open file. I'm going to take this open file, and I'll try and double my rooks. So I can't double my rooks right now, because then he's going to fork them with his bishop, and so be it. So what I'm going to have to do instead is something a little bit different. A little bit different. What I could do is come up to the 7th rank with my rook at this point, which is typically a nice place to put your rook if you can. So let's do that. He can still do this and attack the pawn and attack the rook, but my rook can move. That's one thing. For instance, if he comes here, I can come here and just push him out a little bit. So he's trying to attack this, and fair enough. Keep in mind, I can play this move now, and I'm attacking the rook. So that rook would have to move. But his bishops here prevent my other rook from getting in the game at present, unless I want to come through this way. That's not easy to do, though. So how do I do this? This, he moves his rook. I could move this guy back, giving up another pawn. Giving up another pawn is not really going to help me in this position. So what is going to help me in this position? Maybe I go, on the next move, is he just going to play this, this, and try and win this pawn? Well, I suppose so. I need to dislodge this bishop, but I can't find a way to do that. I can sit this rook back here at a certain point in time. Yeah, I'm really in a bad way here with this rook being so, like I can come here, but then I can't go anywhere from there. I can't come here or here. I can come here, but I can't go anywhere from there. So this rook I'm basically playing without. So I'm going to play this move, just for the sake of keeping the game going. And then we'll have to see what comes next. Attack his bishop. Probably he'll trade. And then we'll get even more trades, but at least the game somewhat goes on. So I'll take here. Now, if I come here, he gives me a check. It's kind of a wasted move, so I'm going to take. And then I think I need to try and activate my king somehow. So at least his bishop literally can't touch these pawns. He can give a check, that's true. But I take, he takes back. And then do I play like f5? He's going to play bishop c7 and then bishop here. So if I come here, he's got this. If I come here, he's got this. He's going to win one of these pawns. Unless I put them right now onto light squares. And if all the pawns get traded and all he's left with is a bishop, then obviously that's not enough to win. So I'm going to attack this bishop to start with. Maybe I should have moved this pawn first, but let's keep it where it is for the moment. And we'll see what he does. He moves there. I'm going to get my king a bit more into the action. Stepping onto a dark square. Living on the wild side. Now we see basically what happens. This is the kind of endgame where the evaluation's probably going to seesaw a lot. If I do this, he can always move his bishop. So there's not really going to be any zugzwang at any point in time. If I do this, he still can't come here, is my basic. But if he comes here, maybe I can even come here, but because of the check, that always makes things a bit difficult. Right. Well, I'll keep on basically waiting. I'll wait, see if there's anything that comes my way. I mean, this is really where I need more time, but at the same time, time management wasn't the issue in this game. The issue in this game, really, was that I miscalculated at the beginning when I played the whole idea of pawn, knight takes pawn, and opening up my bishop and then playing queen a5 with the check, forgetting about the impact that his knight would have on the position. So I'm going to play this move now, just as a bit of a waiting move. Now I'm going to play this move, attacking his bishop. And if he brings it down to attack this pawn, or up, now I'll play this. And he's moving down like that, which makes a lot of sense, I suppose. But he's letting me in a way into the position, right? In a way. I guess I'll come here. Then I can attack his bishop. Or maybe not quite yet. I can certainly push this, but he then gets a passed pawn. I push, he comes up here. And that's going to be disastrous for me. I might have to do something like this. or this even. Takes and takes. That is not good. That's not good. It's not a good scenario. Let's attack his bishop straight away. Also completely losing, because he's going to get a queen before I do. That's the sad truth of the matter. But what can you do about it? We shall see. I'm going to do this and say that I've got 3 pawns, and maybe that's half difficult for him, but then again, not really. Not really that difficult, is it? So I'll come here. Yeah, it's all over, obviously. So I'll resign. Looks like he played it pretty well. A really simple game. I don't know how I lost such a simple game. Let's just have a look at the analysis. Well, I do know how I lost. I mean, I went for that spurious idea in the beginning. I would think that was my issue. But he played pretty brilliantly. So this was all fine. All book moves up until this point, as mentioned. And then I went for this spurious idea, which is what gave him quite a nice big advantage. So if I was going to try something else here, I guess there's many things you could try here. I think this bishop e6 idea is probably typical, and there you go. That would have been a obviously much better way to go. But unfortunately, it's not what I did. So let me go back. I want to see the rest of the analysis, if it will allow that. Going back to the start of this, so all book moves up until my blunder. Unfortunately, after that I played well, like given that I had made a blunder. E6 was another inaccuracy. Best would have been just bringing the rook across. But already I'm a lot worse here because of the initial blunder. So yeah, despite the initial blunder, I mean, after that, everything I did pretty much was as good as you could hope to do. But the initial blunder was just too big to ever come back from. Which is not such a bad thing. Not such a bad thing. Just one initial blunder and he took advantage of it. So let's leave that where it is, and we'll see you next time for another training game. Hopefully no blunders.